first question is our access to Oracle Road right now. There's no stoplight or anything, and traffic is usually light enough that we're able to get onto Oracle or cross across Oracle if we're going south. Are there any plans to put in a stoplight or a crosswalk or something like that? That's the first question. And I guess the second question is, what's the expectation of how much more traffic, how many more visitors, and how much more throughput are we going to have on Oracle and Tangerine because of this?
What I can tell you is that back when Mr. Spaeth explained the history of the project, and this project was always intended to be entirely retail use and fully developed in all of these areas that we're talking about going ahead and developing. The traffic impact analysis was done at that time, and a lot of the roadway improvements, including Water Harvest Way and the ingress and egress both on Tangerine and Oracle for this project, were created based on that estimated traffic. We've done an updated traffic analysis that town staff has reviewed, and actually the change in mix of these uses only adds an additional 10% of traffic to the area, which in the future condition that was already anticipated. And the AM peak, just a second, I want to make sure that I'm accurate. Hold on a second. The AM peak, the morning peak, which is about, I think that's 7 to 9 or 6 to 9 a.m. Paul's going to correct me when I screw any of this up. That is actually a little bit increased because of the folks who might be living the residential, leaving it around the same time. The PM peak, which is the outbound, goes down a little bit because the residents are actually coming home. So if it was all retail, it would be people would be leaving it around the same time on peak. Because we're mixing some residential in the evening, it should help with that a little bit.
For the audience, Ms. Silvan did touch on a little bit of this. When the original development went through back in 2006, the then developer went ahead and built all of the traffic mitigation measures needed for full build out of the center. And that was the full turn lanes on Oracle, the full turn lanes on Tangerine, Water Harvest Way with its full carrying capacity. Now, move ahead several years later, and we're talking about this rezoning. Most of the day, the traffic pattern is exactly the same. However, as Ms. Silvan alluded to, the AM exiting is going to be different. So when it was originally retail, of course, you would expect in the AM people are just coming in. Now that we're looking at hotel and, or the applicant's looking at hotel and apartments, that will generate a little bit more on the AM. So the outbound on the AM is 215 more trips. And to put that in perspective, that's going to increase the traffic on Oracle by approximately 5%. If you look at the existing volumes, and these are kind of the best volumes we have are pre-COVID. So looking at the traffic on Tangerine, it's going to be a higher percentage because again, there is not much traffic on Tangerine. So Tangerine is very much under capacity, and Oracle Road, which we all know is fairly busy, particularly in the morning, it will increase by about 5% due to this proposed development. I'd also like to touch on the our residents' first question, which was, I assume you're in Ramsfield Pass, Rams Canyon, your access to Oracle Road. I'm a huge proponent of putting a traffic light out there. In fact, I've been working with ADOT for years to see if we could get one. Unfortunately, we've done several studies, and the traffic that comes out of your subdivision just doesn't trip the warrants in order for us to put a traffic light in. That is, there's a set of triggers. There's a certain, amount of traffic that's needed in order for a stoplight to be put in. And if you put a stoplight in without meeting these warrants or these triggers, you can actually end up doing something that could cause an accident because it's unexpected. And in your particular case, there isn't enough cross traffic being generated by your subdivision right now. However, there is that vacant lot that is commercial for development. And that original traffic impact analysis did have a requirement for a light when that goes in. And I fully expect that when they go in, they'll be able to trip the warrants. They'll be able to produce enough traffic combined with your subdivision that will finally be able to get a traffic light out there. Our hope is that happens sooner than later, because again, I'm a huge proponent of putting the traffic light in, but we can only put it in when it's warranted. And quite frankly, this is an ADOT highway. The state won't allow it to go in either until it meets those particular warrants.
Thank you, Michael. Paul, I have two questions. First of all, about what trips the aspects in order for a traffic light. I noticed that the new traffic light up at Aerosmith, up at Rancho Vistosa, seems to have a less number of homes in that a traffic light was put in at that intersection. And I'd like to hear a comment relative to the one at Oracle and Ramsville Pass. The second one is, first of all, I want to applaud everybody that's involved in this project. This project is a fabulous project. I think all the way around, from an aesthetic point of view, from the survival of the marketplace in general, which could be an abandoned building if something didn't go in there, plus the need for a community gathering center, which we don't have in Oro Valley. You know, all of this has to offer, I think, is something that I'm excited about personally. One of the things that hasn't been talked about, and I'd like to ask this of you, and you may or may not have any figures for it. I don't know how much tax concessions were given to the developers for this particular project initially, but I'd like to hear that when the tax concession period is ended, if any, what the tax impact of additional taxes coming to the town of Oro Valley would be as a result of a full build out and successful operation of this project. Because that would affect everybody's taxes. And I'd just like to hear if there's been any calculations made along those regards.
In particular with your particular street, or Ramsfield Canyon, the ratio between the amount of traffic on Oracle versus the cross traffic coming out of your subdivision, the ratio is too light. It's too light coming out of your subdivision. That's in contrast to up on Aerosmith, and frankly, the Aerosmith signal just barely met warrant, and it was because the ratio between the amount of traffic on Rancho Vistosa Boulevard and the ratio of traffic coming off of that Aerosmith Moore Road loop was more in balance, causing mathematically that warrant to actually be tripped. And I do believe, I don't know the count off the top of my head, but there are several subdivisions along that road on Aerosmith that both east and west that are benefiting from that light. So you can't just concentrate on the east side of that intersection. There's also several subdivisions that empty onto it from the west side as well. So there's a lot more traffic on Aerosmith itself.
So I just pulled up, we are having an economic analysis updated. I don't have the updated one. So we will have more information at our September meeting, particularly related to the taxes. And I know that town of Oro Valley has embarked on an analysis as well, specifically related to the tax increase. That being said, we do have some economic impact numbers. We know that there'll be over 250,000 square feet of new commercial space, 634 residential units in the 270 hotel rooms. It's projected to have a construction cost of about $237 million. So obviously we need to multiply or divide for the tax to know what that is in construction sales tax. I can't remember what the percentage is in Oro Valley. There's also the jobs created just from the construction, 2,800 jobs, which is 116 million in wages. So we have some of those kinds of numbers. I know that's not directly answering your question, but I don't have the tax numbers at the ready. We are looking at it. It will have significant increases because it's bed tax, it's retail sales tax, and construction tax. I actually don't know the other part of your question, which was the, I have a piece of the other part, which is how much there was a sharing in retail sales tax with the original developer of the project. I don't know exactly how much in dollars that was. And that was in large part to offset their investment in Big Wash and actually constructing the River Park Trail in the area. That I believe has expired.
Yes, that original agreement with the original owners, Vestar, has expired.
So I have just a basic question, and that's about the light situation and light pollution. And I'm wondering what studies have been done in terms of light pollution and how that's going to impact these communities that are basically against the base of the mountains and enjoying their evening starlight and that kind of thing. And that would be specifically for hotels, seeing the height is going to be higher and it's very close to Oracle. I'm in off Ramsfield, and common space, parking lot areas. You know, what is the height restriction for lighting in the parking lot areas, that kind of thing, and how is it going to be radiating out, and what is that going to do to our nighttime environment in the community?
Oro Valley abides by the outdoor lighting code, which is a requirement actually throughout our entire region. In addition to our residents throughout the region enjoying the night skies, we have a very strong astronomical employment base and research that goes on in this region that's really important to protect. So the lighting will all have to comply with the outdoor lighting code, which means that all lighting has to be shielded. It cannot trespass across the property lines. The lighting on signs is very limited as well. We are in a lot of ways, because we've got the parking, particularly for the apartments, the 2 apartments under the building, that's going to reduce the amount of lighting from parking lots. That's a significant amount of our parking that will now be covered. And then any of the other lighting in the parking lot would be similar to what's existing there. I don't know exactly what the heights are, but there are height limitations in the outdoor lighting code. I don't know, Mr. Spaeth, if there's anything else staff wants to add relative to the outdoor lighting code.
Sure. Yeah, I can add a little bit there. So, right. So our outdoor lighting code is based on what's commonly known as the dark skies ordinances around the county, which get at exactly what Ms. Sylvan was referring to limiting that light pollution for astronomy and just overall limitations on light pollution impact. So, you know, every single building that comes in, should this be approved in the future, is going to have to provide a lighting plan that is in conformance with those standards, that are thoroughly looked at and reviewed. And for your question about light poles and common areas, you're not going to have any lighting poles taller than what's out there today, which were originally designed to meet that same outdoor lighting ordinance. There are limitations on how high exterior lights can be. They need to be at least partially shielded, if not fully shielded. And there are limitations on when business signage must be turned off as well, because obviously that can contribute to overall light pollution impacts as well.
I want to share some thoughts, and I want to go negative and then go for potential positive. How I think this project has huge potential. Preface my background: I grew up here. I've been an employee of WLB long ago in the past, when Sun City was being developed. And I got to say, they've done their homework and a lot of hard work putting out those plans. That being said, I'll just, if I may, go a little bit negative on the plan. And it's not really negative. It's just, if I jump in my car and I start heading towards Phoenix, and I know this because I'm working on a lot of projects up there, I get this, I get commercial development, large malls, I get this stuff. If I mosey further north to Scottsdale, it's the same. Go to Carefree, it's happening, the economy's booming, development's going on everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. And I noticed the other meeting, a lot of the complaints were very obvious, one of them being traffic down Oracle. I live in Rams Pass. I deal with the intersection, and these guys are talking about a stoplight. I happen to be glad there's not one there yet. I know it's eventually going to happen. When it does, if you live and drive that road every day, or if you live in Catalina going down, you hit those lights wrong, it's an ordeal getting through that part of Oro Valley. And it's neither here nor there. When that stoplight goes in, that problem will get worse. This huge development, you can't argue it away. You can do the parking lot studies. I know, I work with those. We do them downtown and they've got problems already, and we produce it just the way it goes. All that being said, if I can switch to what I'd really like to see happen, Mr. Horvath, and are you with me, Mike? If I can share what I'd love to see happen, because I think it would, I'd like to see this project set Oro Valley apart from what I described as kind of mundane commercial development. And for some reason, I think it's been brought up in the past, is the idea of a river walk. And and the other thing is, there's a bunch of land to the west, the wash, big wash right there, that at one time was slated, it looks like to me, when I looked at the historical maps, it was graded to be developed. What I'm wondering, and I know it's owned by Pima County right now, I believe, but what I'm thinking is you capture 200 to 300 feet along that entire reach, you do a serious river walk through the middle of this development, potentially also starting up by Walmart, come down, you can go, the total length would be at least a half a mile, and you can trick it out with a lot more units along Water Harvest Way, businesses, restaurants. I Googled San Antonio Riverwalk. What I Googled economic benefits, they said $3.1 billion a year. That's a long river walk, but I divided it out for a half mile, and it was $103 million a year. I know this whole thing is about numbers and churning economic development. And I also know that there's 100 reasons people would say, no, you can't do it, you can't do it. But my comment and challenge to the town council and Mr. Horvath is I'd like to see you ramp this thing up, and rather than 237 million, spend what it takes to do a real river walk. You can gain a lot of units. And if you do that, my off the cuff opinion is the rents on all your apartments just went up 50 to $100. The caliber of hotels you're looking to build go way up. All your revenue goes up. Parking's an issue. You
Ross,
can charge
just to let you know, we're past your 3 minutes. So if you
okay.
finish
Well,
up,
anyway, you get the gist and the idea. I scribbled this up while earlier in the meeting. I don't know if you can see that, but that's my idea and thought. I know a lot about. You could easily encroach on that wash. There's no negative impacts, and I suspect you know that.
A lot of the concerns that are being voiced today have been voiced, have always been voiced, and they were part of the discussions on when we had that meeting back in March, as well. It sounded encouraging to know that when Mr. Soffersberg, who owns that lot that he just sort of paved, that once he built something on it, then that would probably constitute having a traffic light, which for those of us that live there, that have to come out of that community or even enter the community, we see a need for it already, even though it doesn't trigger what ADOT requires. So I look forward to that, and it's encouraging to know that that would be coming once that lot, once they build something on that lot. From a shopping perspective, okay, I don't shop in Oro Valley because there's nothing there. Okay, I mean, I do a little bit. I don't say I don't. Let me rephrase what I just said. I do grocery shopping in Oro Valley, but there are just so many things that are not in Oro Valley that I have to go into the town of Tucson to shop. I would prefer to put the dollars in my own community. So I'm excited about this project. I appreciate very much so much of the work and the research and analyses that have been done, and I'm encouraged. I'm also encouraged by the fact that I remember in our last meeting that the concern for wildlife, around us, that you won't be encroaching on that. There are areas that have been proposed, or developments have been proposed that go into like the Catalina Mountains, and I would not be for that, but you have a site already, and it would be wonderful to see that site flourish.
I have basically two questions. First one is related to the whole Oracle Road situation. I know that ADOT is repaving, but it's south of us. Is the repaving going to come up this way? Because with these added traffic, it's just going to make this section of the road worse. Do you know if they're planning on paving up this far?
The repaving of Oracle Road is in 2 stages. So the first stage, which is underway right now, they should be wrapping up the main piece in Oro Valley here within the next 3 weeks. Then there's a second piece from Calle Concordia to Tangerine, and it is going to be bid out this coming winter. I would expect sometime next summer is when they'll mobilize. And that's the reason they did the Oro Valley piece right now, is so that it could get done, they could get the bids out, and then the next contractor coming in could just button up to this phase 1 work.
So my second question is, I know all of the planning has gone into the apartments and the hotel and the entertainment center, but what about the existing suites that have sat vacant since the beginning? Are there plans to get tenants in there, and not just anyone, but people that are going to be a betterment to the community?
Very good question, and I can tell you that Town West has been actively marketing, and you have seen some additional restaurants even during COVID come into some of those spaces. Some of them were replacements of some tenants that had recently gone away. The goal of any retail owner is to get those spaces filled. There's no question. And as I mentioned before, Town West is a local developer and is really focused on wanting to get some cool, neat stuff in there. We know there's a deep desire. The keg is fantastic, but we've heard over and over again that people want more options than going over to the keg for a beer. And we've also heard over and over again, and I appreciate your comment and the woman before you as well, that we want to do our shopping in Oro Valley and keep our sales tax here. So that is the goal, and that is the desire, and the sense is that part of bringing the apartments and the hotels is putting the people on the site who are going to be in addition to all of you, will be the folks who are going to be frequenting these places. And that is actually has been received. It's been really exciting for potential tenants. So I don't have anything to announce right now. There's a lot of excitement around this vision, and retailers want to see more people living in Oro Valley to be comfortable being up in this area, and that's what we're hoping to provide. So we're all aligned in that desire in a huge way, and hopefully we'll have some announcements soon.
First of all, I want to say I love the ideas that you're presenting. I did attend the March meeting, and that was quite informative. And I'm just even more excited. And I thank you for trying to improve Oro Valley. But my question really is about safety for, especially for the Rams Pass neighborhood where I'm in, or Rams Canyon too. And that's how can we safely walk to the new village center from our subdivision? Are there any plans for sidewalks, crossing walks? Right now we just have on our side, on the, let's see, the east side of the street, seems like there's just a bike path, but not a regular sidewalk. And I'm thinking if we don't have stoplight, that would be kind of difficult, because we might not want to add to the traffic by driving there. It might be kind of a nice idea just to walk across the street and participate in the entertainment center.
You bring up a good point. The issue we have is it's a physical issue. So as you know, the bridge has a sound wall on it. There isn't enough room on that bridge with the sound wall to go ahead and be able to put a sidewalk on there.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a sidewalk, it would have to go down through the wash and connect up to the multi-use path that's on the north side of the CDO. So that's the crux of the matter. But it's something I'm going to bring up with ADOT and see where they are on this, because it's been an issue for years to be able to have that connectivity, not just to the marketplace, but the connectivity from your neighborhood to Catalina State Park.
One of the things I'm always considering is that the jobs that are being created, especially in hospitality, tend to be low-wage jobs. And there are very few places that in Oro Valley that people can afford to live. So that means they're driving or commuting up from in the city. And our transportation up here, especially the public transportation, is really bad, or else they have to try to maintain a junky car. And one of the most difficult parts about being poor is traveling around and getting around to places. So what are we doing to mitigate the problems that will develop for the employees that will be needed to fill these jobs?
That is an incredibly difficult question to answer, but a very good one to ask. When Oro Valley Marketplace was first developed, one of the amenities in the space is actually a transit stop, believe it or not. And it's got a couple bathrooms associated with it. I think Paul can speak to this better than I can, but there's not a lot that Oro Valley can control in bringing bus service, but we've at least created the space on the site. And I know that in some of the other areas, employers have been working to create systems to bring their employees on the site as well. But I think we're hoping for some robust transit.
We are constantly working with SunTran and with the Regional Transportation Authority. The reason that we have not had good bus routes up here is there was not a large load for them to be able to service. There wasn't a lot of ridership. We had a run up here, and the ridership was just so low, it just was not economically feasible. However, the hope is as this center builds out with a lot of apartments that have the hotels, they'll have the retail, that we could further be able to have more discussions with both SunTran and the RTA about creating a permanent bus line up here that would make that connectivity all the way down to the Ronstadt Transit Center. So that is something that those are conversations, and those are goals of the town to be able to have more on the public transportation side.